Mona. Good evening. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at www.cityofclovis.com/agendas, or 2, providing written comments at the same website, 3, participating by phone, or 4, coming to the City Council meeting in person. I will call the meeting to order, and the flag salute will be led by Councilmember Mona Tua.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ashbeck. Here. Councilmember Bessinger.
Here.
Councilmember Monitor.
Here.
Councilmember Whalen is absent, and Mayor Flores.
And I'm here. Thank you. First presentation is a presentation recognizing the achievements of multi-Emmy Award winner Jeff Aiello. So who will be?
What an attitude.
From Clovis.
We're going to play the video?
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to do a quick promo for that if I could.
Okay.
When I was the mayor, Jeff won his first Emmy. And
are you taking credit for it then?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't about me. It would have been multi-Emmy, but it was an accomplishment not only for Clovis, for Valley PBS, and it was a recognition of the things that we do really well here in the Valley. Jeff's publicity on water, Sigma, the importance of agriculture in the Valley have obviously we know about it, and now the nation knows about it. And it's very important work. Valley PBS does really good work with other things too, and we're just very proud to have Jeff in our midst.
I remember getting on the radio, Operations Division Mike. Go ahead. Hey, we're priority traffic. We got 200-foot flame lengths at Flume Peak. The fire's moving towards the east, and we're going to have structure impact within the next hour in the community shaver.
It was like the most perfect placement to have something start.
It was kind of like surrealistic type stuff you see in movies.
How does it make you feel?
Fire resources were limited. Response times were limited.
It didn't just go up, it also went down, and it went sideways all over the place. And it cut off a lot of those egress routes that we'd always planned on.
Yeah, you got it, Mac.
We need to put a
You know, you fly a fire on the backside of the Sierras, sometimes it can be like you're riding around on a paint shaker.
They were in the swimming hall, and the fire blew out the top of them.
I made the recommendation to him that we had used the National Guard with Black Hawks prior for other rescues from Fresno County. Was absolutely cranky by that point. The fire's jumping them over 100 yards away, and they can't see.
As soon as we evacuated Big Creek, the next thing was west of Huntington.
Going up there and seeing the people that I know, that those relationships that I built, the ones that lost their house. When I talk to those people and I drive away, I always ask, could I have done more?
When fires occur, including big fires, it's not a destructive event out in the forest. It's actually a restorative event.
It wasn't that the climate change was on one side of the property line, and the climate change wasn't on the other side of the line. It was strictly fuel.
If they get enough heat from the environmentalists and Congress to say, hey, Department of Agriculture, who the leader is at that time, you log it in.
always heard that the Forest Service had their hands tied by guys like you that wouldn't let them log beetle trees. Is that untrue?
Why didn't the Forest Service use this road on Friday, September 4th, 6 o'clock to insert a hand crew down here and go direct on fire?
Was it a power line? No, it was not a power line. Wasn't an escape campfire. No, it was not that. To think that we'd be doing a prescribed burn in the first week of September is pretty preposterous.
Could we be looking at the exact tree that was hit by lightning and started the big fire?
You didn't think it was going to be easy, did you?
No. And I think it's of note that I was on a COG trip to D.C. before the Creek Fire, and we were in a congressman's office speaking to his chief of staff, and we talked about forest management and how we needed to train loggers and fellers who basically have been taken out of the equation by the environmental issues. And I was actually angered because the chief of staff for this congressman looked at me like I had just fallen off a turnip truck. They had absolutely no interest in helping us. They didn't think it was a problem. And about 6 months later, this happened. So having this type of cinematography to show the problem so it doesn't happen again, because we're going to be back here in about 2 months. And hopefully the Department of Agriculture and Department of the Interior and Forest Service, these people will actually get their act together.
And I want to comment on the art. It's great to have an artist here in Clovis. What you've done with this documentary and others is it's beautiful. I mean, it's just the beauty too. So not only do we get information that we can act upon, I mean everybody that has a responsibility, but you see it in such beautiful way with your cinematography. So thank you for that.
I just chime in. I don't want to not chime in. So thank you for your work. I think what I was thinking about is partly why Clovis is because we tell our stories really well, and we've told them over time. And I think your work tells bigger stories, but the power of storytelling, because in 20 years or 100 years, people will go, the Creek Fire, what was that? But I think capturing that is really important. That's how communities stay together. I think that's how our regionals stay together. So thank you for being kind of that champion storyteller for where we live. Thank you. Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Jeff.
If you'll come up, we have a banner for you. This is a Clovis flag.
Thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate that.
And the pelican.
Could you get one of those in your next film?
Appreciate you guys.
Well done, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, that was good. What's the date on this? Jeff, what's the date on this? Oh, September 30th. It'll air.
Well, no, that documentary.
Was that last year?
Last year.
Yeah,
oh.
It won the Emmy Award for topical documentary in that category in the Northern California Emmy Awards, which is all the TV stations in Fresno, San Francisco, Sacramento, Reno, Chico, Redding, and Hawaii.
Nice. Yeah. So where can we see it? On Valley PBS?
You can go to valleypbs.org, and it's playing right there. It has its own YouTube channel as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
So it's a full feature 2-hour documentary.
Yeah, I wanted to do it here, but they said no. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Our next item is a presentation of proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month, and this will be by Eric.
I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and Eric, you can say a couple words after that. It is my distinct honor to present the proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives of the 111th United States Congress has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Clovis, and whereas parks and recreation programs provide recreational and social opportunities for youth, adults, and seniors, which improves the physical and mental health of our citizens, and whereas parks and natural open spaces can improve water quality, help to reduce flooding, improve air quality, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas provide beauty to our community and create space for children and adults to connect with nature and enjoy the outdoors. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the city of Clovis does declare July as Parks and Recreation Month. And it is signed by our Mayor, Jose Flores Garcia, on this 5th day of July, 2022.
Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council, for the proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month. I also want to thank you for your support of Parks and Recreation through the years. I know it means a lot to the community and to the residents. We have a great trail system, we have great parks, and we have great recreational programs. Our recreation programs are available for adults down to youth. They give people the opportunity to get out, get some exercise, have fun while they're doing it, meet new people, meet old friends, and then it's also a good opportunity for our youth to develop leadership skills and to give them something positive to do. So we have a short video.
Made by Jeff
No, highlighting some of Parks and Recreation in Clovis.
Parks and Rec Month is the month set aside each year by the National Recreation and Parks Association to remember and to just acknowledge recreation and park facilities that the community and city offers its citizens.
I think the thing that's most important for us in the recreation department is to be able to provide programs for a multitude of different age groups, starting as early as 2-year-old and going all the way to adults.
You can take a walk on our trails. Clovis has a fantastic trail system that is pretty much renowned throughout the state.
You're happier when you're outside. You're happier when you're doing things.
Just go enjoy it. Parks and Rec Month is about making life better and making the community better and just making it a more enjoyable place to live and work and play.
Thank you. No, it was proven during the COVID pandemic when everybody had to stay home, but we kept everything open still.
Yes, we did.
And it's documented because our counters on the trail proved that our citizens, I'm sure the residents of Clovis and from around this region came to use those amenities and walk those trails by the millions. So it proves that people want that kind of amenity and enjoy what they do there. And when they can't leave, when they can't go vacation somewhere, at least they have something to go to. So it was great. It's been great.
I was just going to say, I have this idea that, I don't know how to make it happen yet, but it's a detail, that I want Clovis to be designated as one of the healthiest places to live in California. They have all kinds of rankings for this and that, and I know that maybe we're not big enough for some rankings, but I'm working on an idea. But the role of Parks and Rec in that story makes Clovis a desirable place to live. So to you and your team who are here, thank you. You all do all the hard work. We often say, like, people think, oh, you guys do such a good job, if that's what you think. And we always say, no, it's really you. So to each of you that take care of the parks and the neighborhoods and keep them looking great, thank you. So all of the credit goes to all of you. So thank you for that. But thank you.
Eric, you come up. I don't know if there's staff members who wanted to come up with you.
I'm sure they do. Come up and shake our hand. I know it's what you live for.
Parks and Recs.
What's that TV show?
Yeah.
Oh. Didn't drag the rest of them up there with you?
Thank you.
Oh, come anyway.
There's Rex.
Come on. Thanks, Ryan.
We're gonna have to start hiring shorter employees.
I know.
Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna have you not to do that again. Thank you.
Bye-bye, thank you. This portion of the meeting is reserved for public comments. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the city manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Anyone in the public here present wishing to make public comment on items not on the agenda? If it's on the agenda, you'll have the opportunity, but if it's not on the agenda, what was your issue? Public, okay, come on up.
For allowing me to do this.
Okay,
my name is Phil Flick, and I attend your beautiful senior center you have, and you should be very proud because that is a fantastic center. The reason I'm here is before the pandemic, it was fantastic. We missed it for 2 years when the pandemic hit because people weren't dancing. We weren't allowed to get in there. When we came back, there were some changes that were made, and the one sheet I gave you, that's 72 signatures. That's almost every single line dancer and couples dancer that attends all the classes there. They've come up with a new deal where the seniors need to sign on online and pay. Okay, so what that requires you to do, and it's not an easy program. You go on, you sign up, you take the class, you put $5 charge on your credit card, and then you have your attendance. When you get to the class, you have to sign in. There's another thing you scan to let them know you're there. And then when we're done with that, we walk into the room, and there's another piece of paper we have to sign saying we're attending. Okay, that's confusing enough. Okay, I'm one of the young ones out of the group. I'm 66. Most of the group's in the 70s and 80s. Okay, they've come to me and they asked me to come here and talk to you because they don't want to go on the computer. Okay, for years they could walk in and pay cash or a check. All right, and it was fine. Now all of a sudden, we can't do that anymore. Okay, the problem is we're losing people right and left because they don't, and they won't. They will not use their credit card. Most of them can't do the computer. If they show up at the class prior to, it can take us up to a half hour to get people signed in so they can pay the $5. Now all of a sudden the class, instead of being from 7 to 9, is 7:30 to 9. So it's shortening the class. So these are just some of the things. This kind of one I don't know. I'm hoping you can help us out. We have new attendees that come in, and what we've actually done is, thank goodness for this little lady here, she worked with Jim, and she's got a class on Thursday now for beginners, okay, which really helps. Most of us have been doing it. I've been doing it for 4 years again after I came back from a divorce, but 17 years? 17 years? So they've been doing it for a long time, and this is great. You should come join us sometime. It's country dance. I know if you don't like country music, but it's country dance. It's great exercise, absolutely fantastic exercise. But like I said, if at the rate we're going, we're losing more and more couples because they're refusing to do this. And I got to be honest, if it was me, I could put a $5 charge, but mostly don't want to, and I don't blame you. $5 charge on your credit card is kind of a silly thing. Because all of a sudden now when you go to do your booking, you've got a lot of little itty-bitty charges. The other thing that happened is price went up, which I can understand. Line dance went up 25%, went from $3 to $4. The one we're kind of wondering about is the couples dance, because it went from $3 to $5, so a 40% increase. And the explanation hasn't really been given as to why. We heard the rumor that it could be security, but we have no security there. And I don't know if you know, we're 2 blocks from the Clovis Police Department. I got to be honest, I feel no need for security. I have full faith in those gentlemen. They will come help us anytime we need it. So this is kind of where we're at. I just wanted to bring it up to you so maybe you could help us out somehow. Maybe not.
Now, you brought this to the attention of staff?
Yes.
And
I was security, that cash can't be accepted because the governor of California said we don't accept cash, which, okay. But yet Friday nights when we have dance, you pay $5 at the door for 2.5 hours of dance. 2.5 hours of dancing, folks. I'm like, woo-woo. What else can you do in this city for $5 for that long? So that's where we're having a problem. You got to pay credit card of this, but yet Friday night you can pay cash. So I don't see why we can't just pay cash every time we go in.
Thank you for bringing this item to our attention. We'll make sure that someone speaks to you tonight. Who? Amy? Amy. And get more facts. That way we can bring it to the council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Here in chambers. Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, so we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. The next item is the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered routine in nature, are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item unless a council member requests individual consideration. The council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Does any one of the council members have an item on the consent calendar they would like to pull? No? Anyone in the public wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar here present in our chamber? Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's 4 with 1 absent and no nays. Public hearing. A public hearing is an open consideration within a regular or special meeting of the City Council for which special notice has been given and may be required. When a public hearing is continued, noticing of the adjourned item is required as per Government Code 54955.1. The first item will be 21, consider approval of a resolution, adoption of a resolution amending the 2019-2020 Action Plan and the 2016-2020 Consolidation Plan, and consider approval of a resolution amending the fiscal year 22 and 23 Housing and Community Development budget to increase funding by $201,848 for the expenditure of community development block grants and coronavirus CDBG CV funds. Our staff members are management analyst Claudia Casares.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Flores, council members, Claudia Casares with the city's affordable housing programs. For your consideration today is authorizing the use of the city's 2022 reallocation of community development block grant CARES Act funding in the amount of $201,848. Just as a refresher, the city received CDBG CV when it was authorized in 2020. It's referred to as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act for short. Funds are to be used for activities that already qualify as eligible uses in the CDBG program, but these must alleviate or address the effects of the coronavirus. Over the last 3 years, the city received a little over $1.43 million in CDBG CV funds. The money funded two programs, as you're aware, Meals on Wheels for seniors and the Emergency Housing Payments Program. The Meals on Wheels program served 840 clients with over 20,000 meals, and just as importantly, helped keep Clovis restaurants operating. Additionally, through the Emergency Housing Payments Program, 234 families were provided emergency housing payments for up to 3 months, and they also received housing counseling to assist them in remaining in their homes. Since that time, HUD has taken unused funds from around the nation and reallocated them to grantees who had proved they were capable of quickly expending CDBG CV funds, grantees like the city of Clovis. We've received $201,848 in the reallocated CDBG CV funds to be used for programs and activities that are CARES Act eligible, same as the rules were before. So to that end, staff proposes to use the CDBG CV funds to fund an emergency utilities payment program for the city of Clovis residents to pay city utilities that are in arrears as a result of impacts caused by the coronavirus. As you well know, over the last couple of years, staff has now found that many households either skip payments, made partial payments, or have been late with their payments. And just recently, city staff has found that there are 2,800 utility accounts in arrears for a total of over $1.4 million owed to the city's utility account. When we cross-reference the addresses of those late utility accounts with our CDBG eligible areas, we found that there's over 500 accounts that have addresses within the CDBG eligible areas. And those are for a total arrears of $288,000. And the reason we did that was to see if there was actually going to be a demand for the CDBG CV funds in what we considered low-income areas. The CDBG CV funds will be allocated as shown in the table. 20% of the funds, or $40,368, will be used for admin, as allowed by HUD. And the remaining balance, $161,480, will be used for the utility payments. To be able to utilize the funds, HUD requires the city to amend our 2019-2020 action plan and the consolidated plan for 2016-20. As that was the year the CDBG CV funds were first allocated to the city. The proposed amendment and this public hearing was noticed as also required by HUD on the Business Journal on Monday, June 27th, 2022. No public comments have been submitted as of today's council meeting. The Emergency Utility Payments Program will be marketed through mailings in our utility accounts, through local nonprofits, at the Senior Center, and haven't told Amy yet, but at the Senior Center, and through our online media. Interested customers will fill out a CDBG application and submit it to staff for review of eligibility. They will have to be low income, 80% and below of the area median. If they are found eligible, funds will be transferred directly to the city's utility account in their name and not to the applicant. Staff intends to provide a maximum of $3,000 in one-time assistance to eligible families impacted by COVID-19. Late utility fees that will be paid through the program had to have been incurred after March 2020, which was when the CARES Act was enacted. And that's the end of my presentation. This is also part of a public hearing, and we're available if there's any questions.
Questions for Ms. Cáceres?
Are we waiving late fees?
We are, well, that's a good question.
It seems like we'd be paying ourselves the late fees, or if we waive them, that $3,000, that money's going to go much further.
We are paying utility payments that have not been paid. So I don't know that there's any late fees attached to, in addition to utility payments that haven't been paid. But yes, we are paying ourselves, which is allowed.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. We have not charged a late fee since the beginning of the pandemic, so there has been no late fees charged to any account since March 2020.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Claudia, I appreciate the city doing this. When is the time limit in which we have to find these 500 families to make sort of a claim on these funds? Is there a deadline?
There is. I believe it's 2 years to spend the funds.
Okay. And do you know if the need is, this is only in the past, I'm assuming, a lot of it is in the past. How about current needs? Do you foresee any of those at all in which we can also apply and assist with? So, for example, these 500 are probably those that are in arrears, but then potentially there are those who may still be in need right now, recurring need. And so how can we also, if we don't get up to the 201,000, which I hope we do, but if we don't, how do we also help those who are currently in need? Can we do something like that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we could consider. I think over the next 6 months, it's going to be kind of a trial period for the program. And if we see that there is additional need beyond what's already in arrears, we would come back to City Council for a change in the program.
Okay. And I think Chad, I think it'd be great to have the mayor put out social media, in Spanish, and also if we need an Hmong, just to reach through. Yeah, okay. I think that'll be helpful, or Claudia would, you speak Spanish, to just put that out as well. That'd be helpful. Thanks.
Will the families be prioritized by sort of the most behind first?
It will be first come, first serve basis.
First come, first serve.
And we will be working closely with our finance department and getting the word out to those that are behind. And we won't be receiving the funds probably for another couple of months. And in the meantime, those that are in arrears, and I'm speaking for you, that are in arrears, will be notified of the program and will be put on hold so that we could wait till our funding is available and the agreement is signed with HUD and the money available.
Seems like, it'll be a big relief to anybody, but if you are behind since March of 2020, you're really behind. So maybe just sort of you'll just see how the response goes, right? I think that's the intent. To help those most significantly impacted by COVID. Because if they're behind on their water bill, they're behind on everything. So just a thought as you get the applications. I'd be curious to see that.
Yeah, that's a good question, because there is several accounts that are $30, $40, $50 behind, and then there's several that are thousands behind. And so if we prioritize those that have larger amounts, the bigger bang for Claudia's time.
So let me see if I get this straight. So the money will become available. Then those who are in arrears will have to self-identify. We will reach out to them too?
The intent was to reach out to the customers with delinquent balances as we try to get payment from them or make payment arrangements to get them more current.
So once they self-identify, then we'll let them know about the details about the program and then offer to pay their arrears.
Once they've been certified that they're eligible, they would work with Claudia, in which we would then ultimately credit their utility for whatever amount is determined by Claudia.
So the city will never send them a check. It will just be, we will make sure that they know that what they owed, it has now been paid because of this program.
Correct.
Okay.
Claudia, will we be working with the Housing Authority to identify even those families who are potentially on Section 8, you know, who are having some assistance, so that way we know for sure at least they are income qualified and potentially live in the census tracts that are in the CDBG, so that way we can work in conjunction.
I think we can. This Section 8 program and the Housing Choice Voucher Program is a partner with the City of Clovis, and we could definitely reach out to them. I do know that a lot of them that live in apartments already paid their bill through their rent, and so they wouldn't necessarily be late on the utility billing on our side. But we could definitely reach out to them, make sure they know. There's several new programs that have come out in the market recently as well, and so we're required to not only verify their income as eligible, but make sure that they're not receiving assistance from another entity, which is easy for us because we know they're late. It's in our system.
And you know, I think Lynn said this earlier. We don't tell our stories well, and if you can capture some, you know, I think in this current difficult time with inflation so high, I think there will be grateful families, and you know, for you to help them, or us to help them during this time, it'd be great to just capture some of the stories to be able to share. Yeah. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions from the council, anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item here in chambers? Seeing none. Anybody on the web?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt this resolution to amend the action plan and the 2016 to 20 consolidated plan, and approving the increase in funding to CDBG, CV funds. That's hard to say. That's very hard to say. Yeah.
CD.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So I hear 4 ayes, 1 absence, and no nays. Next item is item 22. Planning and Development Services conduct a public hearing and consider approval of a resolution declaring the results of the property owner protest balloting proceedings and approving the engineer's report for Assessment District 95-1, Black Horse Estates, confirming the assessments for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. And the presenter will be Supervising Civil Engineer Sean Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Let me get this. Sorry. So I'm here tonight to conclude a Prop 218 vote for Black Horse Benefit Area 2. As you remember, we performed a Prop 218 vote for both Areas 1 and 2 last year. During that, Area 1 passed their vote, Area 2 failed their vote. Since then, we've done a slurry seal of the private roads, and we're coming back this year just for Benefit Area 2, which we initiated on May 9th. At that meeting, Council acted on a resolution of intent to begin the process for the Prop 218 vote in order to consider increasing the annual assessment rates for only Benefit Area 2. They have a budget shortfall where the revenue does not exceed the expenditures. Now, Benefit Area 1 currently has a budget with revenues that do exceed the expenditures. And that's why we did not propose to initiate a Prop 218 vote for Area 1. The ballots for Benefit Area 2 were mailed out shortly after the May 9th meeting, and we were proposing an annual increase of $129 per parcel per year. For Area 1, we are proposing to maintain the current assessment of $647 per lot per year, and the increase for Area 2 would bring their amount to $590 per lot per year. Now, the actions following the vote tonight are dependent upon the outcome of the vote. Staff and the district's engineer have prepared the engineer's report that assumes the vote passes for Area 2. The engineer's report is in front of you. It contains the current proposed rates in Table 1 and Table 2, and revisions to the engineer's report will be necessary should the vote in Area 2 fail. In either case, the engineer's report that reflects the outcome of the vote will be submitted to the county in time for the assessments to take effect for fiscal year 2022-2023. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Sean from the council? Vaughn?
Sean, you put in here that without an increase in the assessments, the streets are relatively soon need to revert back to the city. So what is that process? Let's say it doesn't and funds are needed and streets are needing repair. What's that process? And does it only occur in Area 2 if it goes, and then Area 1 still remains private?
Yeah, good question. Both areas are independent. I don't know the specifics of the process, but I know we'd have to come back to council. We talked to the city attorney's office, and it was spelled out when we originally created the assessment district. But I would assume that we would only be looking at the one that has a poor budget, and we would not, undo the one that continues to have a good budget.
And then, do we know how much potentially that would increase in their property taxes if they came to us? I mean, it would be something which we controlled then. It wouldn't, correct? Something in which...
If we reverted to public streets, the impact would be that they would no longer pay this assessment, so they would actually have money back in their pockets.
Okay, so they won't be in... So whatever they're paying in property taxes, what it is only then, they would be relieved of this 461.
That's correct, right?
So, I didn't track that. So, if the vote doesn't pass, how long do we carry an assessment district that's unsustainable? So I know the creation of this is a one of a kind in the city of Clovis. Did it once, we'll never do it again, full stop. But okay, we have it now. But it seems counterintuitive that you don't vote for it, so we just take it back. We incur the cost. You don't have to pay anything. Well, why would you vote for it? And it's not just the streets, right? It's the landscape around the neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, the construction of this has many problems. I get that, but am I following that line of thought? So if this fails again and eventually the fund is just depleted, we got to take over the costs. They're not going to get money back. No, we'll keep the money for future expenses. But I mean, if it's all gone, I'm not tracking that process.
I'm uncertain as to the full extent of the process, but if we do away with the assessment district, then we no longer.
But does the city have the authority to abandon an assessment district? Hi, David Wolf. I didn't see you sitting down there.
Hi.
You're just such a regular fixture. I didn't even notice. Hi, David. But I mean, do we have the ability to abandon an assessment district if they continue to vote no and we run out of money? Is that in our purview?
That was set up when we created the assessment district. Yeah, the means to get out, I guess.
Basically, a
was laid out.
reversionary clause.
So it reverts back to city streets, city landscaping, city...
Gates are gone.
Basically,
gates are gone.
Yeah, the gates
less
come
landscaping.
down.
And what's the forecast on that, given the fund balance that we have? Do you know?
Well, we expended a large amount of it for the slurry seal. After that, we need to really consider if this doesn't pass, because we're slowly dwindling into the account, and it's just not sustainable. We're not going to be able to perform maintenance for too long.
So we did slurry seal on both of the zone districts, the one that passed the increase and the one that did not. Do we typically do slurry seal on private roads?
No, we generally don't.
This is another one of those unique things about this once in a lifetime.
But we chose to do this slurry seal because it was needed. It's been needed for quite a while, and if this ever does go away and revert back to a public street, we want to take over, something that's in good shape. So we want to make sure we spend the money to get the streets up to snuff.
there was adequate funding to get it done. It made sense from a financial standpoint to do them both at the same time, so we went ahead and did it. If it does not pass tonight, we're going to have to come back to council with some hard decisions about benefit area 2.
I don't think it'll be hard. There won't be any money. I mean, I think it's pretty simple to me. My question, though, is that doesn't require a property owner vote to disband the assessment district. Is that right? We just get to, by some clause in the agreement, end the assessment district because of the money?
I would have to read the agreement. I am not certain at all.
I mean, normally it would, so I need to look at the formation documents, our office, so I can't really answer that right now, but normally it would require some kind of voter approval from that assessment district to unwind it. So we just need to look at and see if there was some clause in the formation documents that might allow that to not happen.
Well, because you can't have it both ways. You can't not vote for the district and then not vote for it to go away because you don't fund it. Like, that's no. You have to pick one. And tonight, maybe it'll pass and this will all be for nothing, but I just think this is full of all these little twists and turns inside this.
It is. I mean, it could just be an unmaintained street, becomes a crumbled road. I mean, that's the reality. So, but we just need to see what the formation documents say, if there's an out without voter approval, or they can approve to disband it, become public streets, or they can have crumbled streets and the city has no liability and it's just the assessment district responsibility.
Let's see what happens, I guess.
Mike, you have information for us?
Yeah, when Sean's right, when it was started, this eventuality was considered and it was set up so that the streets come back to the city, the gates come down. Once the streets become public, they're ours to maintain. My understanding of those documents is that it does not require a vote of the residents.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we see how the vote turns out. But I mean, it's a complicated, it's just an unusual agreement, which is why we only have one.
But if that eventually should happen, and we have to take it back, it's not part of any LMD, and therefore, whatever money is in general is what gets spent on the rest of the landscaping. And then now as far as asphalt maintenance, that they just get on the schedule that the city will place them on after this slurry seal?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay. At this time, the public hearing for the assessment increase in benefit area 2 of the Black Horse Assessment District is now open. Comments can be provided and ballots can be submitted until the close of the public hearing tonight. Anyone wishing to withdraw a previously submitted ballot can do so. Anyone wishing to submit a new ballot in place of a ballot previously submitted may do so. Only one ballot per parcel will be accepted and counted. No ballots may be accepted or withdrawn once the public hearing is closed. Is there anyone present who would like to submit or withdraw a ballot? No one? I see no one. So at this time, does anyone from the public wish to make a public comment on this item? Okay. For the record, we need it on the record, so that's the only reason we asked you to come to the mic. Sorry.
Craig Dewey, a resident in Benefit Area 2 since day one. Just a quick question in the agenda here. It calls this election a property owner protest balloting proceeding. Is that correct? It's a protest?
That's the normal language. That's the same language we had last year, too.
It is? I've never heard it called a protest. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else here, President Chambers, wishing to make a comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
With no further comment, the public hearing is now closed. Will the clerk please tabulate the ballots and report out the results? While the ballots are being counted, the council will take a brief recess. So we'll adjourn with brief recess. Huh? About 10 minutes? Yeah, okay, we'll be in recess for about 10 minutes. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. At this time, our clerk will announce the results.
For benefit area 2, we received a total of 50 ballots with 35 voting in support and 15 voting in opposition. Therefore, the preliminary results show that the proposed increase passed.
Good for them.
What is the number of eligible voters in the assessment district? Do you know?
81.
81? Well, we don't have to take the streets back. That's a good thing.
Not
Keep
now.
your streets. That's a good thing. I'll make a motion to approve that if that's your pleasure, Mayor.
Second, yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution declaring the results of the property owner balloting pursuant to Prop 218 and approve the 22-23 engineer's report for Assessment District 95-1.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So the motion passes 4 with 1 absence, 4 ayes, 1 absence, and no nays.
That is good news. That is very good news.
And that concludes item 22. Things that
Do we communicate to the property owners that it passed? How do they find out, besides the neighbor telling them when he goes home? Do we communicate with them?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. I'll have to look back and see what we did last time. But yeah, if you'd like us to communicate that to them, we definitely can.
We will.
I mean, it seems like you should just say, like, finally, or, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think
Don't say that part, but.
I think what we could do through the property manager, they have contacts with everybody, and I think we just send out a short notice.
That seems reasonable.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to our next item, item 23. Consider introduction of an ordinance, R 2008-0783, a request to amend the Loma Vista Community Center North and South Master Plan to remove the planned local street identified as Marengo Avenue within Plan Area 1 and Plan Area 2, and to adjust the underlying R3 zone district to reflect the modified circulation layout, AP Multifamily LP property owner, Watson Castanos Homes, applicant, Precision Civil Engineering representative. This was continued from the June 20th meeting, and our staff members, our city planner, Dave Merchant.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you noted, this request this evening is an amendment to the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan. It's got a couple of key provisions. The foremost is the request to eliminate about 700 feet of a planned local street alignment that's shown on the graphic on the screen, kind of in a X'd out area within the red existing property boundary. The secondary component is the request to extend an existing R3 residential zone district that is on the majority of the property. Both of these actions are intended to prepare the site for a future residential development that has been in the planning process for a number of years. This application, or at least the initial concept, predates my arrival with the city just about 3 years ago. So this applicant was working with Dwight and Brian in the past on bringing a higher density multifamily project here. City's been excited to see that, at least at the staff level, to see the higher density project come into this portion of Loma Vista, which has been, to this point, really focused on single-family development thus far. So the opportunity to see one of these higher density projects move forward within the community center has been a priority. Unfortunately, with the street passing through kind of the center bulk of the property, this applicant has not been able to find a way to make the project scale with that street alignment. And so after looking at a number of alternatives, they came forward with a project and asked if the city would consider eliminating that local street, which is what brought us here this evening. A little background on the community center's master plan. The plan itself was adopted by the city as a city-initiated project back in 2009. The master plan is specifically required by the Loma Vista specific plan Before development within those boundaries can proceed, it's about, the overall master plan, about 275 acres of mixed uses. It's characterized by pedestrian-oriented, higher density residential, along with integrated commercial and open space areas. And in terms of those open space areas, a key feature is the village green, kind of at the south central part of the master planning boundary. The yellow dashed area that just came up on the screen is the flag-shaped existing boundary of the parcel, and so this shows that the parcel boundary is split between an area that's designated for existing residential as well as mixed-use village, which is that purple area. Diving a little deeper into the proposed amendments, again, the key provision is with a request to eliminate a portion of a planned local street, which is along the Marengo Avenue alignment. This graphic shows the area that would be eliminated by the proposed request, the blue dashed area. The secondary component would be to extend the existing R3 zoning, which is the yellowish-orange area shown on the screen. And so this graphic here will show the area that would be reclassified to R3 in conjunction with the project. Again, a majority of that area, I'll do it once more, is where the street alignment is currently designated. It would occupy that area, and then a small sliver of the C3 commercial zone would also be reclassified. The graphic on the screen now just shows what the future zoning would be if the master plan amendments are proposed, a combination of R3 and C3. Because the key component of this proposal was to eliminate a local street, the focus of the initial analysis was on whether the street circulation layout can survive the proposed change. So we looked in detail at streets and circulation in this area. The street classification system in the master plan is really unique to these boundaries. Marengo Avenue is a type of local street that's identified as an urban neighborhood street. And those are the purple designated streets on this portion of the master plan. An urban neighborhood street is really a kind of a fancy name for a local street that provides direct access to properties along its alignment. So it's basically the kind of streets that most neighborhoods are built on, with a standard. This has a 36-foot curb-to-curb section, which is pretty standard with a 12-foot sidewalk and parkway pattern. It's a pretty common local street. It's not really intended to gather or convey heavy amounts of traffic. It's really designed to put cars in driveways, if you will. It's a little bit unusual that local streets like this are put into a master plan and shown on the master plan boundaries. Usually local streets aren't designed ahead of time. They're just incorporated as individual projects are proposed, like subdivisions would be most commonly where local streets come up. In the case of the community center's master plan, some of these local streets were identified as being important to achieving master plan goals. And in the case of Marengo, at least the approved design, portions of Marengo are necessary to support the Main Street undercrossing at Shaw, which is what is shown in this graphic on the screen now. So the local street that goes underneath Shaw Avenue is the Sanders alignment, or Main Street. We'll talk a little bit more about that Main Street alignment as we go forward. So again, we're back to the circulation concept. I'll show you maybe illustratively what I mean by portions of Marengo being important to the function. So if you're the little blue car-shaped shape on Shaw Avenue and you want to get to the Sanders Main Street that's shown in the gold star, you can't access Sanders directly because Sanders is below grade at that point. So you can't just turn right as you approach that green area because you're above the local street at that point. So basically you're going to drive past that intersection and go up one of these frontage roads or the local street and then make your way up to Main Street. And so that we know a portion of Marengo was intended to convey people up to Main Street. The portion that would be affected by the proposal, which is kind of the north end of Marengo, isn't really essential to that function, and goes back to its normal function of just putting effectively cars in driveways. As we looked at, could Marengo, at least a portion of Marengo, go away? Could we eliminate that portion? What effect would it have? We worked with the engineering division to consider from a congestion and traffic movement perspective, would significant concerns be generated? And there was no concern amongst our traffic and engineering team about this, the status of Marengo and potentially losing a portion of it. It just isn't designed to carry enough traffic that it matters whether we retain that or not. Once we looked at the function of traffic, vehicle capacity and so forth, we're satisfied that the elimination of Marengo wouldn't significantly or substantively affect the overall function of the master plan. We looked at some of the other key elements of the master plan to determine what their relationship was to the proposal. The next key proposal or key element of the master plan is this Main Street concept, which is along the Sanders Avenue alignment. The Main Street is shown, again, conceptually there in the picture on the bottom right as a really intensive, vibrant, vital commercial and mixed-use pedestrian environment. Pretty much the entire eastern boundary of the subject property, including the southerly flag part, has frontage along the Sanders Main Street, but it is all retained under this proposal. So there are no negative effects associated with this proposal on the Main Street concept. We also looked at trails and gateways, which are a central design feature throughout the Loma Vista specific plan. As it relates to the master plan area, trails are planned along Main Street again and the Jefferson Canal corridor. So we're talking about this central feature along Main Street, as well as along the western boundary, which is the Jefferson Canal alignment. So again, no trail alignments or gateway locations. Gateways are the purple asterisks are affected by the proposed amendments. We also looked at the residential development standards, which are intended to help bring about the desired effect in the master plan boundary. There are design and development standards for all kinds of residential products, from lower density to higher density. In this case, the proposed project doesn't propose to change any of those standards. So any future development here would conform to the existing standards of the Loma Vista specific plan. If the primary component of this project is the elimination of Marengo, the secondary part is a relatively minor expansion to the existing residential R3 zone district. The R3 zone allows 15 to 25 dwelling units per acre, so it is one of the higher density residential districts in the city. As I noted, there are development standards that anticipate those densities throughout this master plan. The proposal to expand the R3 zone district, and again, I'll show you where that would extend. That R3 extension continues to be consistent with the underlying mixed-use village land use designation within the master plan, and it's consistent with the Main Street concept, which looks to integrate commercial uses, which would be kind of maybe the reddish area there along Sanders, with the higher density residential uses, which is kind of what we're talking about trying to accommodate with this project. The Planning Commission considered this project at their May 26th meeting. There was no public testimony provided during that meeting. There were no substantive questions from the Planning Commission. The Commission ultimately voted to recommend approval of the project 3-0. Commissioner Bedstead and Chair Hinkle were absent there, which is why we only had 3 votes. Interestingly, after the Planning Commission meeting, we got a couple of calls from owners on either side of the Sanders Main Street alignment that didn't really express any concern about the project under consideration, but they had similar questions about how those local streets affected their properties and whether or not they would be limited by those alignments in the same way that this project site was originally limited. And it turns out we have gotten enough of those questions that we've started to spend some of our own engineering staff's time to map out how this conceptual frontage road, local street alignments would work. We're making some progress on that. Probably is quite a bit more flexibility than the concepts initially on paper would have suggested. And we'll be working with those owners to kind of figure out what opportunities exist for the development of their properties. And interest in this area is now, I'm not necessarily heating up, but we're certainly getting more interest in all kinds of development here north of Shaw. So in summary, the master plan amendments are proposed to allow a higher density residential project to move forward in a manner that's contemplated by the master plan. We have not identified any conflicts with the goals or key features of the master plan. There's a relatively small change from C3 to R3, which would be consistent with the underlying general plan and specific plan land use designations. And there have been, thus far, no objections identified by neighbors or the public. One of the other things that I wanted to do specifically, not having had an extensive amount of background with this portion of Loma Vista, is go back and see what the history of changes to the area have been. There are built-in provisions for both minor and major amendments to the Community Centers North Master Plan. As I went back and looked what those amendments have been, like there have probably been about 5 major amendments to various components, primarily focused on circulation and development standards in this area that have been approved for the purpose of accommodating residential projects. Those are not exactly the same elements that you're considering this evening, but the scale of the changes, the kinds of things that are being proposed are consistent with the amendments that have been approved in the past. As such, staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of the amendments to the Loma Vista Community Centers North and South Master Plan, which would eliminate a portion of Marengo Avenue, not Marengo Drive, and would also expand the R3 zone district accordingly. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Dave? Paul?
Thank you, Dave. My question is, was the initial intent for Marengo to act as a buffer between sort of higher density and commercial? And then if we eliminate it, you know, how do we anticipate that? And have we analyzed developments around town where higher density abuts commercial, and if there are higher calls for service because there is no buffer, and it may be the backside of a commercial building that is there abutting next to, depending on what comes in. I mean, I'm not against it or for it, but I just wanted to make sure we really analyze that portion of it. That's a great question, and I think traditionally we would look to separate those uses from one another as a traditional development pattern. So where we have a shopping center, we might use as a street, or at least a portion, like let's say a parking and drive aisle to buffer the shopping center from a residential area. In this Main Street area in particular, probably throughout the master plan, but at least along this Main Street, the master plan specifically looks to integrate commercial and higher density residential with one another. So it talks about doing that by placing uses adjacent to one another and by stacking complementary uses on top of one another vertically, in like a vertical mixed use kind of environment. So in this case, I think we're actually looking to mix those uses as much as we can to increase the kind of the activity and vitality of the area. One of the things that we have been looking at conceptually, because we don't really have a defined project layout at this point, is to use the trail alignment that will be located still along Main Street, as to whether that can be the kind of separating feature, buffering feature between a commercial Main Street area and the adjacent higher density residential product. But again, that's not really a requirement of the master plan. And again, in some cases, we're really looking to blur the separation between those two uses. I think this is a good time to see how we do it instead of just a block wall. Yeah. You know, how do we integrate where it's not really the back of just, you know, all these commercial buildings and no one goes there except for criminal activity now. And so how do we make it where the C3 blends right into the commercial, and instead of saying, okay, you know, we're building these multifamilies, so we're just going to put a block wall, commercial, you on the other side, and then the life of the commercial is on Main Street, right? Sanders. So I think I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully PD can also weigh in on, as this moves forward, on how do we make it so that way it is lively, it is where neighborhoods and commercial, that commercial center blends together on both sides, instead of just, this is the front and the back is just an alley, or, you know, alley type where it's loading, so.
Yeah, I think those are great points. We've been having a handful of discussions with folks that are looking at mixed-use projects of one sort or another, including vertical mixed use. And I think part of our experience at this point is that we haven't had really any substantive new mixed-use projects, and I can't even say, you know, ever really. That we have a little bit of historic mixed use in Old Town, but our experience locally is that we're missing that from our playbook. And so I think we have some uncertainty because we haven't seen it work. We know that there's a possibility of different kinds of commercial and residential uses maybe not getting along as well. And so we're tending to maybe want to make sure that we know what we're getting ourselves into. But I think I can say reasonably that we have a plan that calls for it, and so we are encouraging it. And at some point, we will get some folks that want to pull the trigger on that and can make it work, and then we'll begin to understand in practice what both the commercial and the residential side need to be successful.
On one of the diagrams we saw, Keats went all the way to, I forgot the western street there.
The Wolf, yeah.
The Wolf. But on this one, it doesn't. So is the plan where it can and it will, depending on what comes forward, or is it where we are wanting to cut it off?
That's a great catch. I wondered if anybody would notice. I think that just relates to maybe the inconsistency in the way that we show these local streets. If we look at the circulation, so that's an example of the land use plan that doesn't show Keats going all the way through, whereas the circulation plan does show it going all the way through. So I think the intent is to initially or eventually have Keats crossing Jefferson and coming into DeWolf. How that's going to get done and when there's enough of a driving factor to cover those expenses, I think is yet to be seen.
Well, because it's Sanders is going to be busy, but if Keats doesn't, I'm just saying be flexible, because if all that R3 comes out only through Sanders and or through Shaw, I think it's just too much. Yeah. And so that's why I saw this and I saw the other one, and I was thinking, are we going to close everything off where everything just comes out? Because before it would have been Marengo that allowed at least two, another exit point and entry point for this whole R3. So, okay, let me see. Also on the map, does the C3, as you take that out, does it lose a little bit? Because the map shows it smaller, but I'm thinking it's probably not to scale, so it would still keep the same amount if Marengo was going through, or are we cutting C3 a little bit smaller?
This proposal would take, and I don't have the depth of it exactly, but it does take a sliver of the C3 and convert it to R3.
Okay, so it does cut into the C3 on the northern part of Keats a little bit. Okay, all right, thank you. Then?
Thanks, Dave. Two things. You used the word Frontage Road.
Right.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so
or show me where you're talking about.
Go to this alignment here. So this feature here, and I apologize, this graph isn't or this tool isn't doing exactly what I want. But this alignment here, kind of this funky shape.
Oh, I see that stretch?
Yeah, is conceptually a frontage road. Now, when we drew these plans back in 2008 and 9, before the plan was adopted, I think we didn't know exactly how we were going to make access back to Sanders' work. We just knew that we needed something to be able to take traffic off of Shaw and get it back to the Sanders Main Street alignment. The reality is, as we've studied this over the last really couple of weeks, is there are only a couple of locations along Shaw, on the north side of Shaw, that effectively can provide access and get particularly left turns that are traveling on Shaw north of Shaw. So I don't know that we're going to need that the frontage road as was conceived in this drawing here. And this is, unfortunately, as detailed as it gets. This is as much as we know about our intent is the graphic that's on the screen. So that's why we're spending a little more of our time and resources now to maybe provide some substance or some realistic alternatives, because the folks that I've been talking to, that I mentioned in the presentation, on either side of Main Street, look at that frontage road and the local street alignments, and they said, well, that's going to take the bulk of my property. How can that possibly work? Nothing's going to happen here if I can't go forward with something. So as we studied that, we've identified that there's some alternatives that are necessary or that are practical. We may end up doing without the frontage road.
Okay, all right. And then my second question was maybe more of a technical. In a master plan, it's not a rezone. You use the word extension of a zone district. Is that like that, so they don't have to actually apply to have the property rezoned through this action? Talk about that.
Okay.
Technically, how does that work?
Technically the master plan amendment is an amendment to the master plan community overlay zone for this area. Yeah. And that is processed through a rezoning application according to the administrative procedures in the master plan. So
are we doing a rezone tonight on that sliver of property, or are we doing an extension of the R3?
We've characterized it as a set of master plan amendments, one on the street and the other on the R3 zone. Okay. So there is, the action this evening would include the adoption of an ordinance or the introduction of an ordinance, which would approve the master plan amendments, including the extension of the R3 zone.
So a specific R3 or a rezone action isn't required in a master plan overlay?
It is built into the ordinance under consideration. So we could describe it in that way, but it was relatively insignificant in terms of the overall function. So we have identified it as a set of master plan amendments, one of which would be to amend that sliver.
I think your comment about the cumulative impact or the continuing adjustments or amendments to the master plan is important. If Bob were here, Bob would say, well, wait, we agreed on this, not that. And so I think, and the reality is as it gets built out, it looked better on paper than it practically was. And I think the Sanger Unified discussion is another example of that, where the curved street was great, but it leaves this sliver, and how does that all work out? So whatever I think we can do to be proactive in the adjustments of the master plan without compromising the integrity of the master plan is going to be really important as we go forward, because I don't think this is the last of them.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And as we went back to the staff report, even in 2009, the staff discussion was to your council that amendments to this master plan would be necessary during the course of its build-out. Yeah. So we saw it coming, and this would be the sixth, if approved, the sixth major amendment.
Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, I'll open it to the public. Anyone here wishing to comment on this item?
Good evening, Mayor Flores and council members. How are you this evening? My name is Adrienne Burns. I represent Wealth and Castanos Homes as the Vice President of Land Development and Forward Planning. I appreciate your consideration this evening. I appreciate Dave Merchant and his presentation. Just want to confirm our support of the staff report, his presentation. We've worked for many years together on this. And as he mentioned, I worked with Dwight and Brian years ago on this as well, really dialing in the intent of that specific plan. And one of the things, even working with Brian, Dave as well, is that interconnection of the pedestrian access to the commercial. And it's a very unique look and feel, but we were excited that the parcel that we purchased has both uses in it and found a way to integrate the two uses that make it more functional. Someone can go down, feel like they can go to their coffee shop right there and just have that really good integrated feel of community and not the block walls that are like, this is your spot, this is mine. So we're very proud of that and appreciate city staff's time. It's taken a while to get here, but here we are. The one question you had, Councilmember Vong, was about the size of the commercial being cut back. I thought I'd just mention that it's the same dimension as the Fowler and Shepherd commercial piece. So if you can think of where Fowler and Shepherd is, southwest corner there, that's the dimension of that commercial piece. So it's viable. We've done some very preliminary concepts on it. We're home builders primarily, so we've been working on the residential kind of more as a priority, but noting that that integration is very important. The functionality of that needs to be there. Outdoor seating, things like that, there needs to be space for that. So we know that we're trying to accommodate that, and we have the benefit of having both uses within, and so we want to see them both thrive. So I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Questions? Do you foresee cars being able to go from the commercial to the residential, or is it just walking?
It would be walking primarily, just pedestrian walking, but the R3 zoned area will have access to San Jose. There'll be, its own internal roads to go in and out, and then the commercial piece will have its own, obviously the main street would be where they would come in and out, and then they could go through San Jose in or even Marengo South. It's just that one road was really bisecting it, so.
And then, do you own all the way, Keith's going all the way to the...
No, and maybe Dave can bring it up again. It's a flag parcel, so it's very narrow right on the west side of the main street there, so you can see that outline. Yeah. So it's very narrow, only half of that commercial piece on the south side that's zoned that way, and then just that flag area. That's what we own right there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I see none. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Here on the web?
No.
I'll bring it back.
I'll make a motion to approve or amend the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan as reported in our staff report.
I'll second that.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's 4 ayes, 1 absence, and no nays. Thank you. Next item, 24. Receive and file the 2020-21 single audit and independent auditor report. Jay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight I am presenting a very short report on the single audit and auditor's reports. Annually, normally in December, during the ACFR process, we bring a report to council that includes 4 sections. So this year in December, we did bring you the introductory section, the financial section, and the statistical section. However, the single audit report was not included. And the main reason why the single audit was not included is because the federal guidance related to it was not finalized, so our auditors could not prepare procedures on our documents that was not finalized. So since the ACFR came in December, they did get the chance to review our work and issue opinions on it. So this year, the auditors, the single audit is basically an audit of our federal programs. They picked the larger ones this year, which included CDBG and the CARES Act. and they offered two opinions on our reports, one on the financial section and another one on the compliance. So as it relates to the financials, they didn't have any issues as it relates to the numbers on any of the grant programs. But they did have an area where they found some non-compliance in some of the areas related to our documentation. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and maybe have Andy just give a little bit more background on that.
Thanks, Jay. So as Jay mentioned, the single audit did identify one finding for the Community Development Block Grant Program. That's on page 8 of the single audit document. The finding was administrative and not a financial issue. The issue related to the lack of documentation being in a project file or files, and this occurred due to city policy not being followed in administering the CDBG program, and since it's been addressed. We've made all corrections, so if we did the audit today, it would be compliant.
So other than that one comment, this concludes my presentation. We're available for any questions.
Questions for Jay?
Yeah, I did have a question because it caught my eye because they picked 6, and then all 6 had a finding out of the 36. And so my question is, did the other 30, are they in compliance? Because they only reviewed 6, and out of those 6, they found that we didn't comply. And so I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we didn't just correct those 6, but we did look at all the other 30 and make sure everything was good.
All the files were reviewed for completeness as much as possible, but no, there would be likely more than those 6 that did have issues in this particular year. We did have some staffing issues that ended up where we were simply non-compliant in some of our handling of those files as it relates to kind of the federal documentation guidelines as to what should have been in there. In some cases could not be located. I would not say that was limited to 6 in this particular fiscal year.
Okay. So in other words, the others we looked at and we made sure they were all...
We gathered as much information as we could prior to the auditors, but we simply had an area where it needed to be, some documentation needed to be changed going forward.
Okay. And did it involve similar contractors? Or, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, was it just, you know, everything that involved with contractor A was where we had all the issues, or was it not any of that? It was more internally, regardless of the contractor, we were just not keeping good files.
Internally related to CDBG, we were not keeping complete files for the fiscal year in question.
And I didn't see, what was the amount of those contracts that were issued? Did it vary where we?
Those home improvement loans did vary. The whole CDBG allocation is about $1.7 million, but this is $200,000 to $300,000 of that total would be this program, I believe, for this fiscal year.
Okay. And what we fixed, if CDBG audited, meaning we would be good.
Yes.
I just want to confirm that part at least.
Correct. So the main intent of this is also to notice stakeholders like yourself that there is an issue, and then next year at the single audit, you will also see this finding again, and you will see if it exists as well in the current year. And the idea is that when a weakness like this is identified, that it's fixed in the next fiscal year, and then it goes away.
Okay. So I saw that, I guess it involved potentially the homeowner, because there was a lot of rehab work. Homeowner, a contractor, a manager, and an inspector, and then I'm assuming finance. At least 5 eyes would have been on a file, correct? Potentially?
Potentially, the federal guidelines were specific on what they wanted in each one of those files. We could not produce all of those documents by email, paper. Some of them cases, I just don't believe they existed.
Yeah, I mean,
if I may, there was one form that was missing in almost every file. That form was a completion form that was to be signed by all those parties you mentioned. There were pictures in the file showing completion, but both staff persons that were responsible, both at our contractor
and internally, we're no longer with each agency, and the work simply hadn't been completed.
And I saw that we had the 11 steps, sort of, that are those new ones we also added, or those were always, we had them, they were solid processes, and we just did not complete some of them, or were some of these new and additional, so that way, moving forward, we'll be more complete?
Those were our standard practices.
Standard, okay. Yeah. And then, will we require, is it going to require any training by which we will be more, because I guess in the 5 years I've been here, this is the first time I've seen this, so that's why I ask you more questions.
Right, and I understand. Training was not the issue. Okay. The level of participation from the staff or the lack of was the issue.
Okay. And so I just want to be assured, so moving forward, what we have put in place will ensure this and other federal grant programs will be compliant. Yeah, what we put in place.
That is the intent, is to always be fully compliant in this particular area.
Okay.
We have a pretty high track record, yeah. But in this case, we had some issues that were beyond reasonable control.
Yeah. No, it was just when everyone they picked had a finding, so that's why it really caught my attention. So, thank you. I think I have all the faith in your department and, John's department in overseeing, so that way the funds that are, I guess these are the funds we can get the most in trouble with because, a lot of eyes are on it from the feds because it's the CBDG funds. So.
The positive is the rules are, very specific, so they're set up such that if we have adequate staffing, we can set ourselves up for success because the rules are very rigid that here's what you should have at each file.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So the bottom line, one, the issue was recognized, it was corrected, and it won't happen again. Right.
Yes, and next year during the single audit, we will in fact show you that
we put something in place to prevent it from happening again.
Correct. It's a lot less likely to happen, but in a small office situation like we are, when you're down staff in key areas, there always is this risk of something like this is to happen for a period of time as you try to transition, and sometimes more successfully than others, to new staff.
Okay. Any more questions for staff? I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
So this is a received file, so thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Next item is 25. Get to it real quick. Consider authorization submittal of argument in support of transient occupancy tax increase measure to the Fresno County Clerk Register of Voters for the voter information guide for the November 8th, 2022 municipal election. And staff will be our clerk, Carrie Shaw.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. As we are preparing for the transient occupancy tax measure to be placed on the November ballot, an item for Council consideration is whether the Council would like to submit an argument in favor of the ballot measure to be printed in the voter information guide that will be mailed out to voters. The Elections Code allows for ballot measures to have one argument in favor and one argument against the measure that will be printed in the voter information guide. If arguments for both sides are submitted, authors of each side will have an opportunity to provide a rebuttal. Essentially, any registered voter in the city of Clovis may submit an argument. It is up to the county clerk to select which arguments will be printed in the voter information guide. The election code prioritizes argument submissions in the ranking listed above, from 1 being top priority to 4 being the lowest priority. Should Council choose to submit an argument in favor for the TOT ballot measure, Council's argument will have priority and will be selected to be printed in the pamphlet. Each argument may have up to 5 authors. The names and signatures of the authors will be printed alongside the argument in the pamphlet. Submissions of arguments are due 10 days after the notice of the election has been published in the newspaper. We are anticipating the notice to be published tomorrow, making our deadline to submit an argument July 16th. With that said, staff is looking to council for direction on whether the council would like to submit an argument in favor of the ballot measure. If yes, who on the council would like to author and sign the argument? It can be the mayor, the entire council, a single council member, or a combination of council members. Staff has also prepared a draft argument, which has been provided to you on the dais, which is in favor of the ballot measure for council's consideration if council should choose to submit an argument. If council does not want to submit an argument, no further action is required. This concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions. Also at this time, council, you may also decide to discuss the draft language that we have prepared for you.
Is there a cost?
No.
No. So as a candidate, you have to pay a price, but in this case, you do not.
Right. Any registered voter of the city of Clovis can submit an argument.
Drew?
I looked at this, and the only addition or amendment I would put in here would be the fourth paragraph, a 2% increase in the TOT will bring an additional $500,000. I think we should insert estimated, because maybe we won't get 500,000, maybe we'll get more. But at the very least, we're giving it a reasonable estimate. That's the only thing I really have, and I think we should put this in there, and I think it probably should just be the mayor, but I'm open to other considerations.
Okay. I think we should put an argument in favor. I think everyone should sign, so that way it holds all of us accountable should one of us switch later on. So that way no one goes opposing it, because and so I would like all of our names to be on it. I would either omit or move the first paragraph, because that's all people read. I would start with the second, with the vote yes on measure, but I would just start where it's just saying it's not you paying, it's visitors. I think that is, it makes it, people are less, opposed to it if they read it. So we can move that either to the end or work it in someplace else where it fits, where that's why we're doing it, because we have this citizens committee and we want it. But that second paragraph, I think, is a stronger opening paragraph, because all it's saying is we're doing this, and it's tourists and visitors who are paying. So voters, don't be, it's not on you. So those are my comments.
Lynn?
I say yes, we should put it on. Yes, we should all sign it, or as many are comfortable. So yes, I think the first paragraph isn't truthful. So I think, and I agree with Vaughn. They didn't recommend putting this tax measure. They recommended we needed additional revenue to fund police, and this was one idea they had. But I think this makes it sound like this is the sales tax for public safety, and this is not that. So just the reason I didn't like the language before, this suggests that this is the only thing we're going to ever need for public safety. So I don't think that's exactly that's not what we're trying to communicate. So I think starting with the second paragraph would be great, and then just saying we had a citizens advisory committee who recognized the need for additional funding, and this is one way to get there, or something to that effect. But to make it sound like this is the answer, I think is not. We'll be sorry about that in the future if we do a different tax. But, so however that was, starting with this long paragraph and working those lines in a little bit later would be great, but that would be my advice on the first paragraph. I won't sign if the first paragraph stays like that, because that's not right, but I do want to sign it.
Well, I concur with what Vaughn and Ben have said. One, I do think the city council should offer an argument, and we should all sign it, or as Lynn says, those are those who would want to sign it should sign it. I would hope all of us sign it since I think we all voted for it. It's my recollection. And so there's a word limit, right?
Yes, there is a, let me double check.
300?
300 word limit. And then if there is an argument that is against, we have an opportunity to provide a rebuttal, which is limited to 250.
200. Okay. And so I agree that the language on how this came about needs to be more succinct, more truthful. Well, because it leaves some room for imagination, and we should make it clear. And I hadn't contemplated that the second paragraph should be the first, but hearing the concept, I like it. Something to that effect. So I think with the direction that Fong and Lynn has provided, I would concur with that, and I would trust staff could. So when it has to be submitted by July 16th?
Correct.
So will we have one more meeting before?
We will not, unless you decide, I had planned to cancel next week's meeting, but,
So therefore, we got to do this today or give license to our staff to, with the direction we've given, give us a 300-word argument. Is that?
Correct.
Is that what the council chooses? So any more clarification or on this draft, on modifying the draft?
Do you have enough information to modify it based on the comments that you've heard so far, or would you like us to wordsmith it here for you for the next hour?
I think we have enough information.
Okay.
So we'll either move paragraph 1 to a different location, maybe at the end, or just completely deleting it. We haven't even reached the 300-word limit, so it's okay if we just move it or delete it, whatever you want to do. And then...
Well, I like the fact that you referenced the Citizens Committee, because we should include them somewhere, but to say or to allude that this might be the solution they recommended, we got to be clear on that. I don't know what Lynn was saying.
I think you could just say something like, the Clovis City Council, blah, 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 blah. After a 25-person community member citizens advisory, that's a lot of words, but anyway, recommend the need to increase funding for police officers or public safety. One option for that funding is an increase in the TOT, and here's measure whatever. I think it's that's the linear progression, how we got to this. P.S. there might be more later, but right now that's what this is. I think so whatever those words are, I think is what I would do. And I think that's a pretty long lead into the action, which is what Vong's comment is. This is why we're doing it, and people that visit us are going to pay it. You're not going to pay it, but a visitor. So I think probably the second paragraph is a little bit more direct. Like, that's what this is, and then this is how we got there. We hope you vote yes. That's probably the right order. Yeah.
We can do that.
Okay. So do we need a motion or just direction will do?
You need a motion.
Okay.
Motion that we
let me bring it to the public. Any more comments from the council? Okay. What about public? Anyone here in the chamber is wishing to comment on this item? Mike? Anyone on the web?
No.
Sorry.
Okay, now we can.
Sorry. I'll make a motion that we authorize the mayor and all council members who are interested to sign and file the argument in support of this measure.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So it's 4 ayes, 1 absence, and no nays.
You'll reach out to Councilmember Wayland to ask him? He's not here. We should ask.
Next item is city manager's comment. No, I'm considering approval of change to the council meeting schedule. Item 26.
Staff hasn't been able to juggle the agenda and move things around for the first and third meeting, and staff is recommending canceling the meeting of Monday, July 11th. That concludes staff's report, and we're available for questions.
Questions for John? No questions? Anyone for the public wishing to comment on this item to cancel our next meeting? Next Monday? Seeing none? The web?
No.
Bring it back.
Motion to approve?
A motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So it's 4 ayes, 1 absence, and 0 nays. City manager's comment.
The only thing I was going to bring up was when Bob indicated that he was not going to be here for the meetings of July 5th and July 11th. I mistakenly assumed he meant he was not going to participate. Bob reached out to us this morning and said, "How do I participate?" And I just wanted to take an opportunity to remind council that we're kind of going back to the old pre-COVID rules about participating remotely or teleconferencing in, which basically, the location must be on the agenda. The agenda must be posted at the remote site. All votes must be taken by roll call, and each location must be accessible to the public. So just a reminder, if you're not going to make a meeting and you want to participate, there's a little bit of a different process, and it's just how we used to do it 2.5 years ago.
Do you want to participate tonight?
He did, and I let him know that he couldn't. He could have participated as a member of the public, but we had not done it correctly for him to participate as a member of the council.
And the nuances of the law is that if the teleconference medium does not work, then what happens? Does the site go down, or does everything go down?
So I think you were referring to is going to be the legislation that we decided not to implement,
Right.
which was the Assembly bill. I forget what it was, but it basically, in that case, what it said was that if you did that, you could continue the COVID rules of conducting a public meeting. You had to renew it every 30 days, but if you had any problems with your technology, the meeting had to stop right then and there, which is one of the reasons we chose not to go that route.
But with this, we don't have to do that?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, council comments. Bong.
The Measure C will be going to the COG on this Thursday, July 7th. So if anyone in the public or would like to see how that goes, it'll be on, I think it's at 5:30? Yeah, 5:30 p.m. So, thank you.
Then? Nothing?
I have PTSD.
PTSD. Drew?
No.
Well, I think I might have PTSD. 2, yes, I have to report out that I tried to attend the COG meeting last Thursday, but it was a kind of disappointment that we couldn't follow through because of the rules of COVID, and the telecommunications just wasn't functioning properly, either by happenstance or purpose. I cannot say which one. And but it was, I actually made the motion to continue it to this Thursday, as Bong said, 5:30 at Fresno City Council Chambers, and it will also be on the web. So, very important meeting, and we'll see how it goes.
I do have one comment as our COG representative, may I?
Sure.
I would love it if you would require the COG staff to invest in technology in the room that works. It has been 2.5 years, and it has never worked consistently in that room.
In the prior meeting, we learned that they're looking for another site.
All that is right, but for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
FCTA, nothing has worked reliably from the start of the meeting to the close. And so either COG needs to upgrade the technology, they need to improve the budget, they need to hire an outside AV consultant or something. I mean, it's really unacceptable. 2.5 years past COVID to still be going, I can't hear you. I don't know how to log. It's like too much. And it's a huge failure on COG's part, with all due respect to COG. So I would ask, as a representative, if you could encourage them to budget for and plan for that.
I will.
It is really
We were Zoom bombed, and there was pornographic material on the audio and visual. So, it wasn't the best, the most polite meeting I've ever attended. So yeah, I'll let them know. Because,
Thank you.
Because it was embarrassing that there was little or to no control over what even the viewing public was able to do, especially after 2 years, people should know how to prevent the Zoom bomb.
Well, we had a public meeting for Measure C a few months back, and at 20 minutes after not being able to make it work, I canceled the meeting. Again, if people on the call, they couldn't make the translation rooms work, and so we canceled the meeting. But that is, again, it's 2.5 years, and that is not fair or good or acceptable.
I will let them know.
Thank you so much.
And that's the end of our meeting, so I'll call the adjournment, and we'll meet next time, July 18th at 6 p.m. here at the council chambers.